as a scientist, actually the highest independent honor bestowed upon a Nigerian scientist or in Nigeria. The Nigerian Academy of Science is the peak of foremost independent scientific society. But maybe before I get into that, I'll just simply introduce the presiding officers for this event on the high table this morning. And I'll introduce from the extreme right. I think I have there the Public Affairs Secretary of the Nigerian Academy of Science, Professor Musba Akonji. I think you can do better than that. Sounds better. Next to him, we have the Vice President of the Nigerian Academy of Science in the person of Professor Abubakar Sambo, FAS. I'll skip the President, who will be duly introduced shortly. And next to him, now I'm struggling with seeing, I think is the Academic Secretary for Biological Sciences, and that is Professor Latunde Farombi, FAS. I think with the mask, it's easy to commit a crime and get away with it. You know, so as familiar as I am with them, I'm struggling to recognize them. And next to him is the Academic Secretary for Physical Sciences, Professor Chidi Akujo, FAS. I'll be hearing a lecture from a fellow of the Academy today, and he's here, the person of Professor Obina Owujekwe, FAS. I'm Dr. Doyo Dubanjo, I'm the Executive Secretary of the Academy, but of course, I'll hand over to her, but maybe I'll do a quick introduction last but not least. In the middle here, the only woman, first female president of the Academy, Professor Ekanem Braid, FAS. So the Nigerian Academy of Science was established in 1977 as the foremost independent scientific body in Nigeria, and is dedicated to the development and advancement of science, technology, and innovation for socio-economic development of this nation. The vision of the Academy is ultimately the improved quality of life of a Nigerian society through the promotion and application of science and technology. It functions to bring scientific knowledge to positively guide the strategic direction of this country. NAS is a national non-profit organization with membership comprising 268 fellows since, at the moment since 1977, and they are elected through a highly competitive process, having distinguished themselves in their fields both locally and internationally. The Academy, given its clout, also has the ability to attract other members from around the country and internationally as needed. NAS, with this combination of expertise and its independence, is uniquely positioned to bring scientific evidence to bear on the policies and on program implementation in the country. The Academy is Nigeria's national representative on such bodies as the International Science Council, which is the umbrella body for all science associations and unions, as well as the Inter-Academy Partnership, which is the umbrella body for all national science academies globally. The Academy also has served on the executive committees of the Inter-Academy Partnership, as well as the network of academies of science in Africa. The accomplishments of the Academy are several, both locally and internationally, and it is indeed an honor to be a fellow of the Nigerian Academy of Science. At that point, may I ask all the fellows of the Academy of Science to also please stand for recognition. They are seated in that column there. Please, a round of applause for them. And I know, and we don't do so much of a lot of protocols and things, so pardon me for anyone missed, but I know in this room, and we appreciate and recognize the Chief Veterinarian of the country, who is here with us. Good morning, ma'am. We have a Director General of the NCDC, also here with us. Good morning, sir. I know we have a Registrar of Redeemers University with us. Good morning, sir. So at this point, please welcome with me a distinguished epidemiologist and a parasitologist, and the first female president of the Academy since 1977, Professor Ekanem Braid, for our address.
Good morning, all. It's indeed my pleasure to welcome you to this very important annual event of the Nigerian Academy of Science. I thank you for sparing time out of very busy schedules to be here with us today. I appreciate fellows in council and other fellows who are present today. Some are present virtually. I want to inform you that we have 265 fellows, 265 fellows. The fellows that are here today are mainly members of the Academy's Council and just a representative of the body of fellows that we have. I want to especially thank Professor Bina Ojekwe, Fellow of the Academy of Science, for voluntarily agreeing to give the 2022 public lecture on a very interesting topic, Nexus of Science and Evidence-Based Decision-Making Towards a Responsive and Strong Nigerian Health System. A topic you will agree with me is very apt in these days of epidemics and pandemics. NAS has continued. A background has been given by Dr. Dubanjo. There is the background in your program, and there is also various versions of background in the books that we have at the back, which you are free to take. We have continued since inception to strengthen the nation's ability to deliver the fruits of science to society by the acquisition, growth, and dissemination of sound scientific knowledge and the facilitation of its use in the solution of major national problems. We do this by providing advice on specific problems of scientific or technological nature referred to us by government agencies, and private organizations. We also do this by bringing to attention of government and its agencies problems of national interest that can be solved by application of science, technology, and innovation. We are busy establishing and maintaining highest standards of scientific endeavor and achievement in Nigeria through conferences, seminars, webinars, roundtables, stakeholders meetings, symposia, and publication of journals. Some copies of our journals are at the back there for you to take if you wish. And we use this opportunity to invite scientists in this hall to publish in the proceedings of the Nigerian Academy of Science. We do recognize outstanding achievement to science in Nigeria through award of prizes. And some of you here attended our Gold Medal Prize Award in January. It's an annual event. We are consistently developing working relationships with other national and international organizations working on science. Fellows of the Nigerian Academy of Science are busy all the time, from all this I have said, serving the nation in various capacities. We are also involved in international initiatives addressing global problems. You know there are many global problems: climate change, predatory academic practices, and other issues. We have a calendar of events for each year, and we have a strategic plan which guides us as we move forward. In all we do, we consistently maintain quality and standards, which is the reason the Nigerian Academy of Science is highly respected nationally and internationally. It's unusual for any event of the Nigerian Academy of Science not to start on time. That is one of the things we do. The annual process for election of Nigerian Academy of Science Fellows has maintained thorough and competitive has been consistently thorough and competitive over the years. This process has produced the inductees today who are here to be admitted formally into the fellowship of the Nigerian Academy of Science. On behalf of Council and on behalf of all fellows of the Nigerian Academy of Science, I congratulate you all for this significant elevation and warmly welcome you to our fold. By this time next year, you will be sitting on the other action. It is a call for you to join fellows of the Nigerian Academy of Science and others in addressing several national and international problems. Our publications available at this event reflect issues we have dealt with in the past and issues we are currently dealing with now. I mentioned some of them earlier: climate change issues, maternal and infant mortality issues, linking research to policy so that research is for development, COVID-19, Ebola, Lassa, gender-based violence, science, technology and innovation, education and manpower development in Africa, women in science and all that. This is just a welcome address. We'll continue with the other processes as time goes on. I thank you all once again for attending this event, and I wish you a very pleasant experience at this event. Thank you. God bless you.
Another round of applause for the President, if you please. Now also please welcome with me the Academic Secretary for Biological Sciences, Professor Olatunde Farumbi, FAS, to read the citation of a speaker.
The President, Nigerian Academy of Science, Professor Ekanem Brain, distinguished fellows, ladies and gentlemen, we are honored this morning to have one of the fellows of the Nigerian Academy of Science to give this year induction lecture in the person of Professor Obinna Onwunjekwe, FAS. I read this profile. Professor Obinna Onwunjekwe, MBBS, MSc, PhD, is a professor of pharmacoeconomics, pharmacoepidemiology in the Department of Pharmacology and Therapeutics, and professor of Earth Economics, Systems and Policy in the Department of Earth Administration and Management, both at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. He is the coordinator of the Earth Policy Research Group, as well as the Director of Research of the institution. He is also an adjunct professor of Earth Policy and Systems with the Nigerian Institute of Medical Research. He was the technical facilitator of the 2014 Presidential Summit on Universal Health Coverage in Nigeria. He is a member of the board of the Earth Reform Foundation of Nigeria and also a member of a subcommittee of the National Earth Reform Committee. He is also the director of the Nigerian National Center on Earth Policy and Systems, University of Nigeria, which is part of the African Earth Observatory Platform on Earth Systems. He is a member of the African Advisory Committee on Earth Research and Development of the WHO African Regional Office, the Nigerian Earth Research Committee, the Ministerial Expert Advisory Committee on COVID-19, and the COVID-19 Socio-Economic Working Group of the African Scientific Research and Innovation Council of the African Union. Professor Onwujekwe is currently a member of the Governing Council of University of Nigeria. He was a commissioner in the recently launched Nigeria Commission on Investing in Earth and the Future of the Nation. He was a member of NAS Forum for Evidence-Based Policy Making. He led the Nigerian Academy of Science project on policy research, evidence for effective working of the Earth systems, Lagos State, between year 2010 to 2013. Professor Onwujekwe is on the editorial board of many international and national journals, and he has published widely in many top-ranked journals. One of his main research interests is on ways and means of getting research into policy and practice. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my pleasure to invite Professor Obinna Onwujekwe to the podium to give his lecture. Please give him a hand.
Thank you very much. Madam President, distinguished fellows, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to give this lecture. I was waiting for the slides to come up, and then we'll... Okay, so the title, like we've said, is how do we make this connection between what we generate in science, how does it get into being useful in for the community and for the country in terms of converting them into policy and practice. So how do we use science for evidence-based decision making? Though I'm using health as the case here, but I mean the lecture applies to all the sectors basically. So my talk will cover these broad areas, some conceptualizing evidence-based decision-making, amongst others. Part of it will also look at this connection between science and evidence-based making, looking at some critical areas, including knowledge brokering, outcome mapping, multidisciplinary research, and getting research into policy and practice. And then I think I'll finalize with communication tools. Oh, I'm blocking it. Yeah, well, I can stand here. Must I stand on the podium? I can stand anywhere, so I don't block it. So, and then we end with communication tools for strengthening. So, I think we have this NAS WhatsApp forum that is very active, and I learn a lot from it. So there have been so many conversations regarding this topic on the NAS forum, WhatsApp forum, and I've picked some of them. Some people will hear made some of those quotes, and so I mean you can recognize the quotes that you made, but I think what is the incentive structure for getting research into policy and practice? These are all quotes from fellows, some very senior fellows, who are getting worried that maybe science is not making the impact it should make, that is just existing in a silo. I know there are some disconnect between research findings and practice, but how has the research of our professors helped us to solve our problems? And then, I'm sure you recognize this one, health system deformed by reforms, poorly implemented, half implemented, incompletely implemented, always with self-interest and overriding national interest. So I think the point to make is that for us to have a health system that is deformed by reforms, most likely the reforms were not informed by evidence. So, and at the end, if we start doing things that are not informed by evidence, you can end up with very bad outcomes. So how we communicate our findings to policymakers, I mean, it's a key challenge worldwide, not just in Nigeria. So that tells us, so creating this nexus between science and decision making is quite critical. If we're not to have reforms that deform the system. And then if decisions are not based on scientific evidence, most times it's just a waste. We deform the system. So is scientific evidence useful or used for policy making in Nigeria? So some years back, I did some studies with my colleagues to look at what extent was evidence used to inform the development of 3 policies. These were the Integrated Maternal, Neonatal and Child Health Strategy, the Oral Health Policy, and Human Resources for Health. Well, though we didn't find too much policies informing the actual, too much scientific evidence informing the actual policies, but what we found was the evidence was used more to establish the need, international evidence, to establish the need to develop national policies. And evidence was also used in agenda setting stage. But when it now comes to crafting the actual actions that should be taken and all that, most of them are done without evidence. But so though evidence plays a role, but not the sort of roles that we expect it to play in the actual actual policies. So, well, just to remind us, today we were talking about the health system, so we all know what it is. It's the sum total of all organizations, institutions, and resources whose primary function is to improve health. So that is what we're talking about today. So what are the opportunities, current opportunities for creating this nexus between science and evidence-based decision-making in the country? So there are 2 major opportunities. One, the Lancet Health Commission has come up with many recommendations. These recommendations now need to be formalized into policies. So decisions have to be made. So these those recommendations provide us with an avenue for science to inform exactly what to be done. I mean, there are so many, I've just put 4 here on the slide, but there are so many recommendations where science is going to play a role to make sure we have evidence-based decisions so that at the end, the reforms will not deform the system. The other major area in health where there's an opportunity right now is there's a new National Health Research Policy and Priorities. Our president and ES were part of developing it. I don't know to what extent you brought evidence to develop it, but at least both of them were part of developing that. But so it's an opportunity to implement this policy. A lot of science is needed. So these are the 9 key policy directions. And you can see number 3 is the Federal Ministry of Health and the National Health Research Committee to ensure that research findings and products are put into use. So it also bringing the forth to have this nexus between science and evidence-based decision making. The Federal Ministry of Health and the Health Research Committee to create a framework for improving utilization of research findings for evidence-based policy and decision-making. This is in the policy. So, but we need to do a lot to inform this and to make sure that it really happens. So, how do we conceptualize evidence-based decision-making? What is it? And how is it undertaken? I'm sure most of us know, but so it's a process of making the best decisions possible using available evidence. So how do we make the best decisions? And it's based on relevant facts and not feeling and not faith. You know, in Nigeria, we are used to faith-based decision making. And in so many countries, it will work. Let's try, it will work. It's not based on any fact. So this is not faith-based decision making. It's evidence-based decision making. And then, of course, the data you can get from so many sources, including academic journals that we know. But at the end, the evidence considered should be the best possible available. So science, of course, science produces the evidence. Whether it's physical or biological sciences and other sciences. And of course, we all know what science is all about. So, but context of science informing decision making, we know that health policy making is a complicated process, which involves both science and politics and other things. But it's important that we always make sure that science drives everything. Policies may come in later. And then we need to always find the appropriate mechanisms for transferring research into policy and practice, which is a major challenge all over the world. So how it works. Evidence based on science, we all know that, using rigorous methods. And there are 3 stages of action in evidence-based decision making. We need to gather evidence, we interpret the evidence, and then we apply what we have learned. So this is where the challenge always happens, applying what we've learned to the system for policies to make, since there's a gap between the people who generate the evidence through science and the decision makers. So I've talked about what challenges evidence-based decision making. Issue about faith. I've talked about faith-based decision making, which drives almost 90% of what we do in this country. And so many other countries. And then politics-based decision making. Things are done based on politics. If you go to a community of a top politician, you may find 10 health centers clustered around. And then you go to the next community, there's no health center. And then so on and so forth. I'm sure all of us have similar examples to give. So these are what always confronts evidence-based decision making from science. And then illustration shows that there are a lot of barriers are sometimes unavailability of timely and relevant research. This was apparent during this COVID-19 pandemic. Sometimes the information that are needed are not available. But the absence of a connection between researchers and decision makers, we all can, we have all our experiences on that. And then absence of, that's the same thing. So I won't go through this one since I'm very light, but I mean, we have a current study. The ES has also provided one of the respondents about, and I think our president about what are the gaps in translating evidence into policy and practice. But here we're looking at evidence from modeling. So if you do a lot of modeling in science, how can we translate that evidence into policy and practice? What are the barriers? So this slide, well, I'm sure you get it. So it shows us what are the facilitators and barriers, ease of translation of evidence decision making at individual basis. One is capacity to interpret and apply. So sometimes what we produce, we are talking to ourselves. The people who want to use it, they don't understand what we produced. So if that capacity is lacking, that evidence will not be used for anything, because the person who uses it doesn't understand what we've done. If the decision maker prioritizes that evidence, then it will be used. If the scientist has the capacity to effectively communicate. So if you don't communicate, sometimes we produce science and then we are so happy with what we've done, but we've not communicated. That evidence will not be used. Then if, of course, if the scientist, that's why I say scientists should also come out, for you to be a good scientist, you need to translate what you produce into evidence and practice. Don't just live in your labs. You need to become more extroverted. You need to get to know policymakers, interact with them all the time. That helps you to have that connection for them to know what you can do, and then to use what you have produced for decision making. So that's quite important. So the barriers are, well, if the decision maker has competing interest to what you have produced. You say, this hospital, we've done that. One state wanted to build a lab, and we produced evidence and told the governor, this is a waste of time. Don't build this lab. The man still threw away the evidence and built the lab. And the lab is comatose till today. So, it happens when you have competing interests, but we know once you do something without evidence, that thing is most likely will fail, and all that. So I will not go through all of them, but just so that we'll soon finalize the study, looking at all kind of factors. So that was at the individual level. These are factors facilitating and causing barriers to use of modeled evidence. Personal level, organization, environmental, and so this is just putting everything together. So 3 major issues from what I just produced. How do we provide a link between evidence and policy making, evidence from science? How do we provide evidence, how do we provide a link between the evidence itself and beneficiaries? How is it going to be useful to the beneficiaries? And then link between the evidence and the policy itself to implementation. These are very critical issues, and then we need to get all of them right for our science to be useful, for science to be impactful. Otherwise, we'll talk to ourselves all the time. So we all know where we get the evidence, including meta-analysis and modeling. Apart from the things we do usually. So so I'm talking about the previous, the ones I can mention. Yes, I said some. The Academy of Science had embarked on some evidence-based decision-making initiatives. So this one was quite impactful, though quite short-lived. This was the Forum on Evidence-Based Health Policymaking, where the Academy put some people together, and they were synthesizing evidence on different aspects of the health sector and trying to get them into policy and practice. So it was chaired by the late Professor Adetokunbo Lucas. So when I have NCNC there, if there's nothing I learned from our meetings, he always talks about no control, no conclusion. So science must drive everything. And then this other project that the Academy also undertook in Lagos State, the policy research evidence for effective working of Nigerian health system. It was a project on how to get Lagos State government and Minister of Health to start using evidence to drive whatever they're doing in the Lagos State Minister of Health. And I think it was quite successful for that time. And because of this project, the Lagos State created so many things, including a unit for a policy forum unit or something like that in the ministry, whose role was now to get evidence from science and help to get this evidence from science to use to drive so many things that are happening in the Lagos State Ministry of Health. So I think that was quite a good one. And then we know the academy has been so many other knowledge brokering activities, especially in COVID-19 and universal health coverage. There have been so many of them. So these were the members of the forum. So the academy assembled from journalists. It was a blended team. It was not just scientists, because I think the academy then recognized that to create a nexus between science and evidence-based decision-making is not just a matter for scientists alone. So you can see there, you can see Ruben Abati, people from everywhere. So that was a blended team that time. So some of the people are in this room. So I've talked about this preview project in Lagos State. It was just a collaboration between the Academy of Science and Lagos State Ministry of Health. So this conversation of evidence-based decision-making is not just a Nigerian or African thing. It also happens even in the UK and US. So the National Institute of Health, like most of us know, is almost like the #1 funder of health research in the world. But even the NIH is still struggling to get evidence from science they fund into making impact in the society. So these quotes were from the outgoing director. He was director there. So he said, they didn't have evidence to address vaccine hesitancy. It's one of his major regrets. So he's producing research, but he wasn't thinking about how they were producing a lot of research on vaccine this and vaccine that. But you see, the problem they had, practical problem, vaccine hesitancy. So he said, not addressing vaccine hesitancy is one of the chief regrets, and he wishes that the agency incorporated more insights from behavioral social science research into confronting the problem. So this also brings me to conversations on the Academy WhatsApp, where Nigerian Academy of Letters had a program for Professor Banjo. It was Academy of Letters, and the Academy of Science wasn't invited. And many fellows, senior fellows, were saying no, that what they're discussing there is actually very relevant to Academy of Science, so that we need to blend more to make sure that science makes a lot of impact. So this director said, social psychologists from the NIH, if you don't do more research in that area, vaccine hesitancy, when the next epidemic comes along, we still won't have a good understanding of how to address vaccine misinformation. And then the NIH can channel the same sense of urgency and coordination that it brought to the COVID-19 pandemic to pressing health issues. It should take more action to bolster the diversity of the biomedical workforce, and it should invest significantly more money into social and behavioral sciences. So these are just, you need to invest in some other areas, novel areas, to be able to make a nexus between science and evidence-based decision making. So they're trying to reboot the NIH so that it's aligned more to evidence-based decision making. They want to embrace fast innovation, reduce bureaucracy, build bridges with social and behavioral science, to grapple with such issues such as vaccine hesitancy, and then look outside the agency for insight to break out of the insular ivory tower. So I think that's also a challenge to scientists. How do we break out of our insular ivory towers or insular disciplinary focus to make sure that our research makes impact? So this building evidence, the multidisciplinary approach, so I bring again the quotation from one of our senior fellows, that blending humanities and science, really, that was the title of the Nigerian Academy of Letters Symposium, Blending the Humanities and Science. It raised an important issue of blending in Nigeria's higher education. The title strikes at the root of existence of the Academy of Science. So, multidisciplinary approach is needed in moving science into evidence-based decision-making. Science may not be able to do it alone. So, some of the arising multidisciplinary areas, the integrated economic epidemiological models. So people are blending different types of science with other areas in order to be able to make impact and get the evidence they produce into policy and practice. So this multidisciplinary approach and blending of models and disciplines ensures that strong links are built between science and decision making. I think we have to think about that. I know and make it part of our work that we need to blend in order to make impact. So, but don't ignore politics and socioeconomic context as part of the multidisciplinary approach. We also need to understand politics, informing the nexus between science and evidence-based decision making. I was once in a forum and one scientist presented something. After I said, this is just crazy. What is this? They might say, but this is science. This is what it is. I said, nobody understood what you said here. You take this seat home. So we need to understand the political economy of what we have done and how we want to get into the system. That part of creating that nexus. So we need to understand our environment. Most decision making in health, in fact, in other areas, is politics. So we need to know how to navigate the political waters. Even in the UK, even everywhere. So I think that's important takeaway from this slide. So now, in practice, how do we now make sure that this happens? That we as scientists can get our science into policy and practice, or into evidence-based decision making. So I want to mention these two areas, the rise and roles of knowledge brokering and outcome mapping. I'll just briefly go through them. So knowledge brokering is this missing link in getting evidence to action. We understand that some scientists will never have the capacity or the talent. They can produce beautiful science, but that capacity to move what they produce into evidence-based decision making is lacking. That's where knowledge brokering comes. So there are individuals and organizations like Nigerian Academy of Science that can play that role, that can take the science that has been produced, synthesize it, and move it to the decision maker. So knowledge brokering is coming up because there's a push that we don't just waste science and if you produce findings, it has to get into policy and practice. So that's knowledge brokering, and we have, so knowledge brokerage is, we were discussing somewhere and I mentioned something about knowledge broking. Somebody said, this is a new one. Some want to start eating money now. Before you know, they say workshop on knowledge broking, workshop on knowledge broking. This is not a new way of, I say no, it's not a new way of eating money, or people want to create empire and say they are knowledge brokers. It's quite important. So the brokers are positioned at the interface between the world of researchers and decision makers, which I think that's where Academy of Science and many academies are. They are seen as the human force behind knowledge transfer, finding, assessing, and interpreting evidence facilitating interaction and identifying emerging research questions. This was what NAS was doing as part of that evidence-based decision making, evidence-based forum on evidence-based making in health. So, so I think this knowledge brokering business, I think NAS, we have to take it more seriously and really start brokering a lot, and maybe take over have the largest market share in knowledge brokerage, since we're in all disciplines. Okay, so as part of knowledge broking, is also to strengthen the ability of decision makers to interpret and use research evidence. This was done as part of the preview project in Lagos, but I think it's quite important. So knowledge brokering is coming up to help to create that nexus between science and evidence-based decision making. And there are three models of knowledge broking: knowledge management, linkage and exchange, and capacity building. So we can manage knowledge as the brokers can manage the knowledge, synthesize it, and move it, help to get it into decision making. Or the broker can help to facilitate linkage and exchange between the scientists and the decision makers. Or the broker can just develop the capacity of both the researchers and the decision makers on generation and use of evidence. So, but there are many challenges like everything. Resources require, and the skills that are required for knowledge broking. And the final and the biggest challenge is the lack of knowledge about how it works and some other contextual factors that influence it. So, as I've mentioned, that NAS can actually become a good, well, NAS has been a knowledge broker, but it can expand on its capacities and capabilities in knowledge brokering across all sectors in Nigeria. The other important one is outcome mapping. Now, in outcome mapping, it helps a scientist to look at the environment and know who is likely to benefit from what you're doing and who is likely to help to push it into policy and practice before you start. So this, I just want to say, so usually if you're doing something, you map it. You map who are the stakeholders that will be interested, and you map them into these four squares. And then you look for the ones high alignment with approach and high interest in engagement with issues. Once you find people that are here, try and start engaging with them. These are people that will make sure that whatever you've produced gets into, is useful for the society. Because you may actually be working with people here, they have low alignment and low interest. Then you're wasting your time. So it's also good to map out and find out who these main stakeholders as well are, and they're usually called the boundary partners. So that these people we target in order to make sure that our science is useful. So these are, I'll skip this one. So now we're getting there. How do we now create this nexus between science and evidence-based decision making for strengthening our health system? We know they make four key actors in the health system. We have already defined it. Of course, the health system also includes the population, including patients. Let's not forget that part of the health system. So there's a multidimensional composition of the health system, from government sector to private sector to households to training institutions to research institutions, regulatory bodies. They're all part of the health system. And health system usually is made up of building blocks. Globally, there are 6 building blocks. But in Nigeria, because of our size, we added 4. So Nigeria has 10 health system building blocks. So, and the building blocks are governance. These are the global ones. Governance, service delivery, health financing, human resources for health, health management information systems, and access to medicines and other critical resources. So, but Nigeria added community participation, partnerships, research, and infrastructure. And then these building blocks are usually put together by health system specialists to create a health system. And then, of course, we know all we expect from a health system. You should be responsive and deliver quality services without causing financial hardship to the people. So we have a weak health system. We all know. We all know that. The governance is suboptimal. We have one of the highest levels of out-of-pocket spending and catastrophic health spending in the world. Catastrophic spending means once people spend on health, they're not able to spend on other needed household needs. Our life expectancy at birth is just over 54 years, the 5th lowest in the world. Our maternal mortality ratio, we're only better than Chad, Sierra Leone, and South Sudan. So you see where we are in terms of, see our friends, our colleagues, is Chad, Sierra Leone, and South Sudan. And so these, but there are many policy reforms that are coming up to help to shore up the system. But I think what we find is that the health system has failed to address needs. That's the Nigerian health system. So science has a lot of role to play here. And part of it is finding ways. A lot of evidence has been generated here and there by science, but are not being used to improve the system. And that's why the system it's getting worse. Well, that's part of why, not just the only reason. And then how do we engage the health stakeholders, and how do we use this evidence we have? Lots of evidence, including the ones that have been synthesized by Nigerian Academy of Science for decision making, so that we can, strengthen our health system, which is very weak. So we have 4 models in my research group on evidence-based, getting research into policy and practice. So the first model is we disseminate primary research output to stakeholders. This is what a lot of people do. Number 2 is we involve stakeholders in designing the objectives of the research and get them involved throughout the research. That's the model 2. So policymakers are embedded in the research, in the scientific process. Number 3 is facilitating policymaker researcher engagement and translating findings into policy and practice. So this is more like knowledge brokering. And then model 4, policy and decision makers seeking for evidence. Then we provide the evidence. So those are the 4 models. But I think we also, as scientists, we need to recognize the power of non-academic means of science communication. Social media now is even more powerful these days than journals and all that in disseminating information. So, this paradigm shift is something we also need to take on board. And, something we publish in the conversation. Conversation is a small partner of Academy of Science. And, something published, and quickly, they already 4,500 page views. You will never get this if I published in a paper. It's not possible. So to make impact and to create this nexus, we have to greatly imbibe non-academic means, blogs, policy briefs, to disseminate. It reaches a wide audience very quickly and is useful for decision making. So I've already mentioned about this. So this, I think I'm getting to the end. ES has told me I should round up. So now generating evidence for health system strengthening. I think there are some critical areas that we need to focus on. For Nigeria, we need to plan for UHC. How do we achieve universal health coverage in Nigeria? Every state needs a plan. The national needs a plan. FCT needs a plan. So, and that's 38 plans. But these plans have to be informed by evidence so that we don't deform the system. We have the National Strategic Health Development Plan, 3.2. We are going to develop number 3. This has to be informed by science so that we don't deform the system. And then the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund, the implementation has to be informed by science. So I think one major scientific way of generating evidence that is useful for strengthening the health system is using health technology assessment, which is evaluates the properties, effects, and impacts of health technology. And health technology here does not just refer to equipment, it also refers to procedures and processes that are all looked into as health technology. So HTA is quite important, and the main reason for health technology assessment is to inform policy making for technology in health. So if we are not using HTA in Nigeria, we are still very far away from generating evidence through science that will help to strengthen the health system. So, and the key characteristics is that it is multidisciplinary, involves scientists, philosophers, legal people, religious people. They all come together because some science will produce it, but it's not acceptable to some people, and it becomes useless. So in HTA, everybody is brought together to make sure that whatever is put out there is widely acceptable and is ethically fine. And the scope and method of HTA may be adapted to respond to the policy needs of a particular health system. So major output of HTAs is value for money of health technologies. By the time we start doing things that have value for money in Nigeria, we'll be getting almost there because there's a lot of inefficiency and waste in the system. So the UK, they have their HTA agency. I'm sure most of us may know about it. It's called National Institute for Health and Care Excellence. All they do is to generate information that will drive, scientific information that drives decisions in the UK National Health Service. So if you want to move, say, okay, I want to have, instead of minimum of 3 antenatal visits, you want to have 4. You have to produce evidence to show that that additional one is useful and provides value for money. So it's not faith-based, it's not political-based, it's evidence-based, and the science that produces it. So that's what NICE does. You want to put a new drug into the system. It's not by people putting advert on TV or sales rep bribing directors of pharmacy and all that. It's evidence that drives it. So they have this HTA agency, and they do so many things. So the EG of NCDC has left, but I think the NCDC led a, what I can call, a good case of how science can inform decisions during the COVID-19 by, creating this Nigeria COVID-19 Research Consortium. So a lot of the decisions that were taken by the NCDC as part of, in our response to COVID-19, were actually informed by science. Some of them were from modeling, but that was a very good one. And they had so many strategies and all that. So I think areas for future evidence to policy implementation, capacity development in Nigeria, I think we need to create this national HTA agency. It's quite important. WHO resolution of 2015 or something like that said that every country should have a HTA agency because to decrease waste and to have evidence-based decision making. But still, we're there, Nigeria, we signed, but we still don't have this health technology HTA agency. And then from the Lancet Commission, there's a recommendation to create a National Medical Research Council or Commission that will just be dedicated to funding research because it's been discovered that COVID-19 exposed the inadequacy of the system to rapidly mobilize funds to fund research. But we have fund health research. I think it's almost the same in other sectors, but if we can have this commission that's just focused on funding research, which happens in many other countries, then we will be able to get enough science that we can translate into evidence. The National Health Policy Unit in the Federal Ministry of Health and State Ministry of Health, the policy units have been found to be very useful in Lagos State from the NAS intervention. So, and this policy unit is actually helps to move science, evidence from science into decision making. And then I think the fourth one is NAS and other academies assuming the greater roles of knowledge brokers and policy brokers. So I will mention about this. I've talked about this, that there's ongoing research on how to translate modeled evidence into policy and practice, which is taking place in 5 countries. So it's part of what we are discussing here, and it's been recognized as a problem everywhere. And so finally, how do we communicate? These are my final one. Yes, you can relax. You are not sleeping here, like you said. So what are the communication tools for strengthening the nexus between science and evidence-based decision making? Because we need those tools to be able to do this. So as scientists, some funders, if you are funding your research, they'll ask you to write a communication strategy. So I will not do that. But I think it should be intrinsic to us in science. What are the appropriate communication strategies beyond writing papers? That's what we are all good at doing. 400 papers, 500 papers, 600 papers, but no impact. So we need to appropriate communication strategies. We need to learn how to develop policy briefs. Even if you write a paper, write a policy brief that is easily understandable by everyone, with action points, with the key messages that will be impactful. Then appropriate political and stakeholder engagement using the policy briefs that have been developed. So you have to learn a skill about how to write actionable policy recommendations, not woolly or not unfocused policy recommendations. We need to know how to write a policy brief. The language, the length, and the target audience, they have to be very clear. Sit down, that's what somebody said, sit down and write what you have thought, and not to think about what you shall write. That's also part of a delay. Just write something, and then things will happen. But I think we'll still get evidence-based decision-making into policy and practice, but there's always this big problem about, we have a lot of, even if all of them have been informed by evidence, all the policies and all that, we still need to implement. So this is always the problem. So we have to find ways of implementing them. I say life is a sing it, life is a game, play it, life is a challenge, meet it, life is a dream, realize it, life is sacrifice, offer, life is love, enjoy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Please, another round of applause for Professor Owujekwe for that lecture, and which speaks to the heart of science advice, actually speaks to the heart of national development. Because if you are unable to get your science to inform policies, then development will always be a moving target. So now we move to the induction of fellows. With the permission of the President, I think we can go right ahead. And I'll now invite the orators who are the academic secretaries to take over. They will be calling in alphabetical order the inductees for their induction. I think we'll start with Professor Akujo.
With the permission of Madam President, may I call Professor Folarin Amor Adekola to step forward. Professor Folahan Adekola obtained his Bachelor of Science First Class Honors Degree and Master of Science in Chemistry in 1984 and 1987 respectively from University of Ife, now Obafemi Awolowo University. He thereafter bagged a PhD degree in chemistry, specializing in analytical chemistry of industrial processes, with distinction from P&M Korea University in Paris in 1993. He joined the Department of Chemistry, University of Ilorin, as a lecturer 1 in 1994, and rose through the ranks to become a professor of chemistry in 2011. Professor Adekola's area of research interest includes analytical and environmental chemistry, with emphasis on the following: water and waste water treatment, environmental pollution studies, development of adsorbents, natural and synthetic nanomaterials for removal of problematic toxicants in aquatic systems, as well as extractive hydrometallurgy and solid minerals processing. He has won several academic awards, like Government of France Doctoral Scholarship and the Senior Researchers Fellowship of the International Scholar. Professor Adekola is a fellow of several professional bodies, which include the Royal Society of Chemistry UK, Chemical Society of Nigeria, Institute of Public Analysis of Nigeria, Material Science and Technology Society of Nigeria. Professor Adekola has successfully supervised 14 PhDs and more than 40 master's theses in the area of analytical, environmental, and industrial chemistry. 5 of his former graduate students are now themselves professors. He has published over 170 research papers in peer-reviewed journals and has served as an external supervisor, external assessor, and external examiner to several universities in Nigeria and abroad. He has also served the University of Ilorin in several capacities, including as sub-dean of the postgraduate school, head of Department of Chemistry, Director of General Studies, and the Dean of Faculty of Physical Sciences.
You now come before me and take the pledge. This one.
I, Professor Folahan Adekola, hereby solemnly promise to promote, declare, and disseminate scientific knowledge and serve the Academy according to its statutes and bylaws.
By the power conferred on me, I formally admit you as a fellow of the Nigerian Academy of Science. Congratulations.
May I ask Professor Antonio Amechi Atama to step forward. Anthony Atama is a professor of pharmaceutics, University of Nigeria in Nsukka, where he currently holds the position of Director, Institute for Drug, Herbal Medicine, and Excipient Research and Development. Professor Atama's research focus is on novel drug delivery systems. He has attracted many research grants and awards. He was a visiting professor at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, Israel, and a fellow of the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation. His postdoctoral program in Germany resulted in a grant to start a nanomedicine laboratory in Nigeria in 2008. He has developed novel methods of enhancing drug incorporation in lipid nanoparticles involving mixed crystals and mixtures of crystals using natural biodegradable lipids, which have resulted in the development of several nanomedicines for malaria and other diseases, including a recent formulation currently being patented in Australia. He has locally developed a novel ex vivo method and modified an equation for assessing the mucoadhesive properties of drug formulations. Professor Atama has successfully supervised 19 PhD and 39 master's degree students in pharmaceutical sciences. He has 277 publications in research articles and book chapters, and a Google Scholar citations of 3,927, H index 30 and I-10 index of 87. He has served as external examiner and assessor for 12 universities and is on the editorial board of more than 9 journals. He is an alumnus of Global Young Faculty that developed a framework for optimal healthcare organized by Stephen MacArthur Volkswagen Foundation and the University Alliance Raw. He is a registered pharmacist, fellow of the West African Postgraduate College of Pharmacists, and member Institute for Public Analysts of Nigeria. It is now my pleasure to present Professor Antonio Atama for induction as fellow of Nigerian Academy of Science.
You will take the pledge.
I, Anthony Amechi Atama, hereby solemnly promise to promote, declare, and disseminate scientific knowledge and serve the Academy according to its statutes and bylaws.
By the power conferred on me, I formally admit you as fellow of the Nigerian Academy of Science. Congratulations.
May I ask Professor Olubukola Oluranti Babalola to step forward. Please give her a hand. Professor Olubukola Oluranti Babalola, a National Research Foundation rated and internationally published scientist, is the Director of Food Security and Safety Niche Area at Northwest University, South Africa. And next generation sequencing research has had a seminal impact in rhizosphere metagenomics to better understand food security and safety. Our works have made fundamental contributions to biofertilizer formulations, ensuring environmental sustainability and better crop yield. This has helped to inform best farming practices for improved soil quality via crop seed coating with biofertilizers of indigenous functional diversity. She's one of the very few who have generated a healthy microbiome map for metagenomics and metabolomics profiling for plant health and improved plant yield. Professor Babalola is the Vice President of the Organization for Women in Science for the Developing World, OWSD Africa region, and the head and principal investigator of a microbial biotechnology research group. She belongs to the editorial board for BMC Microbiology and Biochemistry and Biophysics reports. Her passion for capacity building has produced 21 PhDs and 20 MScs. She's a prolific author with an H index of 37, 7,000 citations, and more than 2,000 Scopus Journal articles. She is an AAS Tour Science Diplomacy alumnus, fellow, the World Academy of Sciences Tours, and Academy of Science of South Africa. Her wealth of international experience spans the Americas, Asia, Europe, and Oceania. I hereby present Professor Babalola for induction as a fellow of Nigerian Academy of Science.
Hi, Olubukola Oluranti Babalola, hereby solemnly promise to promote, declare, and disseminate scientific knowledge and serve the Academy according to its statutes and bylaws.
By the power conferred on me, I formally admit you as fellow Nigerian Academy of Science. Congratulations.
Next step for induction is Professor Simeon. Idowu Babalola Cadmus. Professor Simeon Idowu Cadmus is a frontline scientist in the diagnostics and molecular epidemiology of tuberculosis. He set up tuberculosis research laboratory at the Department of Veterinary Public Health and Preventive Medicine, University of Ibadan in 2004. His pioneering work identified the African 1 AF1 clonal complex of Mycobacterium bovis circulating at high frequency in cattle population in West Africa. This foundational study defined the molecular epidemiology of Mycobacterium tuberculosis complex circulating in humans and animals, and delineated the clonal complexes of Mycobacterium bovis, thereby improving the understanding of the molecular epidemiology and the transmission of bovine and zoonotic tuberculosis in Nigeria, Africa, and Europe. Professor Cadmus is a recognized leader and specialist in veterinary public health, whose epidemiological studies on tuberculosis address the human-animal ecosystem interface in Africa. He is the current chairman of Zoonotic Tuberculosis Subsection of the International Union Against Tuberculosis and Lung Disease, the largest lung-air tuberculosis network globally, and a part of the team in 2017 that produced the roadmap for zoonotic tuberculosis, tripartite document of WHO, Food and Agriculture Organization, and World Organization for Animal Health that address major health and economic impacts of this disease. He founded the Ibarapameje One Health Initiative, a One Health initiative in Nigeria towards addressing endemic, emerging, and re-emerging zoonotic infectious diseases at the human-animal ecosystem interface. Professor Cadmus, with his team, continues the work on novel non-invasive methods of diagnosing childhood TB and bovine TB, contributing to and impacting meaningfully on the field of veterinary public health. I have the pleasure of presenting Professor Cadmus for induction as fellow Nigerian Academy of Science.
The pledge.
I, Simeon Idowu Babalola Cadmus, hereby solemnly promise to promote, declare, and disseminate scientific knowledge and serve the Academy according to its statutes and bylaws.
By the power conferred on me, I formally admit you as fellow of Nigerian Academy of Science. Congratulations.
May I invite Professor Abdurazak Garba Habib to step forward. Professor Abdurazak Habib is an infectious and tropical disease physician, public health implementer, epidemiologist, educator, and a professor since 2009. He trained and worked at institutions in Nigeria, England, and Singapore. He was formerly Dean of Medicine and later Foundation Provost, College of Health Sciences, Bayero University, Kano, Nigeria, and a former director, Institute of Human Virology, Nigeria. His interests are in global health, infectious and tropical diseases. He participated in the initial characterization of a new emerging infection, coronavirus, in Singapore in 2003, and a world-renowned expert on snake bite and venoming. He is a recipient of many awards and prizes, including co-recipient of the third prize of World Oxoid Infection Control Team of the Year Award, United Kingdom in 2007. Singapore Prime Minister's Medal and Certificate of Appreciation and Courage Fund Medal for Valor and Selfless Dedication during the SARS epidemic in 2003. And winner Ayo EU Prize for Best Result in West African College of Physicians examinations. Please give him a hand. Professor Habib is a member of several professional bodies and serves on various committees nationally and internationally, including the Ministerial Expert Advisory Committee on COVID-19 in Nigeria, National Healthcare Research Committee, and the Nigerian Immunization Technical Advisory Group. He is the chairman, Nigerian NOMA Technical Advisory Group, chairman, Kano Pfizer Independent International Research Trust, and co-chairman, Kano State Task Force for the Control of COVID-19. Internationally, he is advisor, Royal College of Physicians, London, member of Strategic Advisory Group of Experts on meningococcal meningitis, vaccination at WHO Switzerland, member COVID-19 Vaccine Safety Working Group at WHO Switzerland, and member Board of Directors of the Brisbane-based Global Snakebite Initiative. I hereby present Professor Habib for induction as Fellow, Nigerian Academy of Science.
The pledge.
I, Abdulrazak Garba Habib, hereby solemnly promise to promote, declare, and disseminate scientific knowledge and serve the Academy according to its statutes and bylaws.
I admit you to the fellowship of the Nigerian Academy of Science by the powers conferred on me.
May I invite Professor Ganiyu Obo to step forward. Professor Ganiyu Obo had his university education at the Federal University of Technology, Akure, obtaining a PhD in applied biochemistry in 2002. His research interest is mainly on exploitation of tropical functional foods and nutraceuticals in ameliorating neurodegenerative diseases. Professor Obo unraveled the biochemical and molecular mechanisms of the neuroprotective properties of some tropical foods. It showed that beetroot is effective against impairment of cognition, redox status, and some neural enzyme activities, and that solanum vegetable diets ameliorated impaired critical neural enzyme activities and gene expressions in Drosophila melanogaster model of neurodegeneration. It demonstrated that moringa seed and the leaf supplemented diet ameliorated hyperglycemia-induced neurochemical complications in diabetic rats, and the neuroprotective functional food from citrus pills based diets promoted longevity and augmented endogenous antioxidants in the Drosophila melanogaster. His findings also revealed that alkaloid extract from Africa jontra and the bitter leaf exhibited neuroprotective properties in various experimental models, specifically in transgenic Drosophila melanogaster model of Alzheimer's disease. He also demonstrated that caffeine, caffeic acid, chlorogenic acid, and rutin work mainly by ameliorating impairments in neuronal redox status and activities of enzyme essential for cognition. He has mentored several graduate students, including 25 doctoral graduates, published more than 400 peer-reviewed articles, and attracted several national and international grants. He has 3 patents and had enjoyed traveling fellowships to laboratories in Brazil, China, Italy, and Germany. I have the pleasure of presenting Professor Obo for induction as fellow Nigerian Academy of Science.
The pledge.
I, Gani Yehobo, hereby solemnly promise to promote, declare, and disseminate scientific knowledge and serve the Academy according to its statutes and bylaws.
By the power conferred on me, I formally admit you as fellow Nigerian Academy of Science. Congratulations.
Next, may I invite Professor Anthony Ifeanyi Oko. What? Yes. No. It's correct. Professor Anthony Oko holds BSc, MSc, and PhD degrees in microbiology, and 11 other diplomas and certificates in several specializations in molecular biology and biotechnology from reputable institutions on the continents of Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Americas. He started his academic career at Obafemi Awolowo University as assistant lecturer in 1993 and rose through the ranks to senior lecturer in year 2001 before retiring from the university in 2006 to take up an appointment as associate professor of microbiology at the University of Fort Hare, South Africa. He was promoted full professor in 2008 and appointed head of the Department of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology in 2009, a position he held for 7 years. He also served in the capacities of leader of the water research niche area, deputy dean of the Faculty of Science and Agriculture, severally as the acting dean of the faculty, and currently director, South Africa Medical Research Council, Microbial Water Quality Monitoring Center, South Africa. His research interests falls within the aegis of applied and environmental microbiology. He has published over 430 journal articles, graduated 52 PhD and 68 master's degree students, and hosted 14 postdocs. Please give him a hand. He is a recipient of the UFH Vice Chancellor Emerging Researcher Award, the UFH Vice Chancellor Senior Researcher Medal, and Achievers Award of the Biotechnology Society of Nigeria. Professor Oko also served as president of the South Africa Society for Microbiology between 2011 and 2013. He is a member of several academic bodies in Nigeria and abroad, including the Academy of Science of South Africa, Biotechnology Society of Nigeria, and the Rural Society of Biology. It is my pleasure to present Professor Oko for induction as fellow Nigerian Academy of Science.
The pledge.
I, Anthony Ifanichuku Oko, hereby solemnly promise to promote, declare, and disseminate scientific knowledge and serve the Academy according to its statutes and bylaws.
By the power conferred on me, I formally admit you as fellow Nigerian Academy of Science. Congratulations.
May I call on Professor Barindele Oluowolabi to step forward. Barindele Oluowolabi is a professor of analytical and environmental chemistry with expertise on the development of low-cost, sustainable alternative materials for remediation of contaminated and polluted water and soil. She has successfully exploited clays for the preparation of several new adsorbents using simple surface functionalization technique. These functionalized clay have shown improved rate of micropollutant uptake. She has also prepared magnetic nanomaterial from graphene and iron, a hybrid material from graphene oxide and tripolyl phosphate for the removal of mercury, cationic dyes, other metals, and organic pollutants from aqueous solution. In recognition of her contribution to the Sustainable Development Goals, number 6, she won the African Kwame Nkrumah Scientific Regional Award in 2016. One of the innovative materials she has produced in collaboration with other researchers was from locally sourced kaolinite clay and carrier papaya seeds. This hybrid material has a unique property and the capacity to remove very low concentrations of micropollutants. The hybrid material was eco-friendly and far cheaper than commercial ion exchange resins currently used in treatment of water. The work has been patented at the National Office of Technological Acquisition and Promotion in Nigeria. Furthermore, her research group has extensively worked and is still working on environmental monitoring, modeling, remediation with the application of fuzzy logic, which is an emerging global concept to interpret the results. Modification of starch from underutilized legumes for various industrial uses is one of our research niches. As a mentor, she has supervised over 120 master's theses, 1 MPhil, and 10 PhD students. She's also a regular peer reviewer for several journals, including Desalination, Geoderma, Chemical Engineering, etc. Professor Olu Owolabi is a recipient of many fellowships, including Alexander von Humboldt Fellowship, German Academic Exchange Service, DRRD, the World Academy of Sciences, Chinese Academy of Sciences, and the World Academy of Sciences, University Sans Malaysia. Madam President, may I present Professor Bamindele Olu Owolabi for inauguration as a Fellow of the Academy of Science.
The pledge.
I, Bamidele Iromidayo Olu Owolabi, hereby solemnly promise to promote, declare, and disseminate scientific knowledge and serve the Academy according to its statutes and bylaws.
By the power conferred on me, I formally admit you as Fellow, Nigerian Academy of Science. Congratulations.
May I invite Professor Stella Ifeanyi Smith to step forward. Professor Stella Smith holds a PhD in medical microbiology from the University of Lagos with special interest in molecular epidemiology and antimicrobial resistance of infectious agents such as Helicobacter pylori, Salmonella species, Campylobacter species, and enterohemorrhagic Escherichia coli, EHEC015787. These 4 organisms form the core of her research work. She has published 175 articles. Her landmark contributions include 1. Improvement in the culture and accurate diagnosis and treatment of Helicobacter pylori in Nigeria, and this has earned a nomination of the only African consultant in a European consortium from 29 countries. 2. Designed probes for the accurate diagnosis of tetracycline-resistant genes in Helicobacter pylori by fish technique. 3. Microarray-based serogenotyping and antimicrobial resistance of resistant genes in Salmonella. And 4. Whole genome sequencing of EHEC015787 from animal sources and profiling of the resistant genes which led to the high resolution typing. Professor Stella Smith has contributed significantly to the development of human and infrastructural capacity for health research and has organized several hands-on training workshops with 350 plus participants on molecular biology techniques in Nigeria. She has been principal investigator to 10 research grants and also won several equipment and book grants. She has co-supervised 11 PhD graduates. She is a reviewer for several international journals as well as editorial board members of 2. She is also a reviewer of African German Network of Excellence in Science, AGNES, and a recipient of several international fellowships, including European Union, Alexander von Humboldt, and ISAM, and has retained strong links with her collaborators in various parts of the country and outside. Professor Smith is a member of the Technical Working Group, National Antimicrobial Resistance. I hereby present Professor Ifeanyi Smith for induction as a fellow Nigerian Academy of Science.
The pledge. I, Stella Ifeanyi Smith, hereby solemnly promise to promote, declare, and disseminate scientific knowledge and serve the Academy according to the statutes and bylaws. I admit you as fellow Nigerian Academy of Science. Congratulations.
Well, finally, we have induction of a foreign fellow. May I invite Professor Christian Appy to step forward. Professor Christian Appy's Scientific Prize in Genomics and Public Health has gained him global recognition and respect. Professor Api established a highly advanced and impactful genomic research center in Africa, conducting innovative translational research that has guided outbreak response in Africa. His team performed the first whole genome sequencing of the Lassa virus to unravel the evolution, genetic diversity, and the ancient origins of the virus. This study accelerated the development of a Lassa virus vaccine currently undergoing clinical trials in West Africa. Using the genomic approach, Professor Api's team discovered two new rhabdoviruses, EK1 and EK2, through metagenomic studies of patients with acute febrile illness, and also discovered a yellow fever strain causing the death of children and adults in South Africa, southern Nigeria. His team sequenced the first SARS-CoV-2 genome in Africa from the index case in Nigeria. Since then, nearly 800 SARS-CoV-2 genomes have been sequenced in 28 of Nigeria's 37 states, identify variants of concern, Alpha and Delta, novel variants under the investigation B1525 and B113118, as well as clusters of community transmission. Professor Christian Api has authored and co-authored over 170 publications in high impact factor journals and has attracted over $153 million in research grants from various funding agencies and foundations. Please give him a hand. Professor Api is a recipient of numerous national and international awards, such as the Research Innovation Award of the Association of Vice Chancellors of Nigerian Universities in year 2016, the Human Genome Organization, UGO, year 2019, and the Bailey K. Ashford Medal for the American Society of Tropical Medicine and Hygiene in year 2020. It is my pleasure to present Professor Christian Api for induction as fellow Nigerian Academy of Science.
The pledge.
I, Christian Api, hereby solemnly promise to promote, declare, and disseminate scientific knowledge, and to serve the Academy according to its status and bylaws.
By the power conferred on me, I formally admit you as fellow Nigerian and Academy of Science. Congratulations.
Now please a round of applause for the new fellows of the Academy of Science. Slowly but surely we've come towards the very end of today's event, and I'd like to invite the Public Affairs Secretary of the Nigerian Academy of Science, Professor Musba Akonji, FAS, for the vote of thanks.
On behalf of the President, Nigerian Academy of Science, Professor Ekanem Bridge, I want to appreciate all of you who have found time to be with us this morning. We are privileged to have Dr. Matthias Abdullahi, the Chief Veterinary Officer of Nigeria, who has been with us since the commencement of this program. Thank you, ma. We're also happy and appreciate the presence of Dr. Obiageli Okafor, the Deputy Director of Quality Assurance Division in the Raw Materials Research and Development Council, who is a member of Organization of Women in Science in the Developing World. I want to thank you. We also want to thank Professor Lola Akameyong, Perpetua, the Cultural Attaché, Cameroon High Commission in Nigeria, for finding time to be with us. We thank the Registrar, Redeemers University, Ede. We thank all our fellows who have been with us on this occasion. We have quality attendance. It is the period, the signs of the time that this all is not jam-packed. We, as Nigerian Academy of Science, we still control the number of people we invite into closed-door events like this. We want to congratulate the new fellows and charge them to always support the work of the Academy. Next year, as the MC said, they will be on the other side when we have a new set of people here. It has been a very, very impressive and short ceremony. You can see that we always keep to our timing, because as scientists, we know time is very, very important. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you. I should not forget to thank our speaker, Professor Onwujekwe FAS, for that stimulating lecture that he has given us this morning. The lecture will be available online if you visit the site of the Academy. On behalf of the President, once again, I want to thank all of you for coming to this occasion. God bless you all.
Sorry, please let's still be seated because we will have the procession. The ceremony is still on, please. Okay, can I ask everyone to please stand, and we'll have the procession of the fellows. The high table would lead, followed by the fellows, and then the new fellows. Anyway, they will direct you, please. Go. And there's refreshment here in the hall right after this. Fellows can go to the restaurant. I think you'll be given meal tickets and have lunch. But there's refreshment in the room for everybody. So please wait, let the fellows go out first. Please let them go before we start trying to. So thank you all very much for coming. Thank you for joining. For those online, thank you all, and see you at the next event. God bless you.
One call, word determined to rebuild and restore.